Hey, what's happening, lovely people? This video is going to be about how to treat a meat eater, how to treat someone who's eating body parts of murder victims. Gotta call it as I see it, man. Gotta call it for what it is. People talking about eating meat, man. They're eating body parts of animals that want to live. Regardless, you need to treat people. We all have to treat people with respect, because they just don't feel like what they're doing is wrong. And so their reality, their perception of reality is that, hey, this face on my plate is fine. I need it. So meat eaters are not bad people. They're just people who haven't figured out how to make veganism work for them. They're either not willing to figure it out, or they thought they've tried everything and they're at their wits' end and they're desperate, and so they're eating body parts of dead animals that want to live. And they justify it by saying, hey, look, all animals want to live. I want to live because I'm an animal, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to live. And if that means eating body parts of animals that wanted to live but couldn't because of people like myself who think I need to eat animals, then so be it. And so that's just where we're at right now. We're at a time and a place where your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your brother, your sister, your favorite former vegan are eating meat. Tons of people are eating meat. Tons of people are eating body parts of animals. And we need to know how to interact with them. We need to know how to communicate with them so that we don't lose these relationships in our lives because of the differences in perception out there. So for me, veganism is not a matter of being right or wrong. Veganism is a matter of life or death. And I choose veganism because I choose life. And when other people eat meat, they may not see it as life or death. They eat the meat thinking that it's the way it's got to be. It's just the way it's got to be. They even say, oh, I wish I didn't have to eat meat, but I believe I do need to eat meat, so therefore I'm eating meat. So, number one, when treating a meat eater, when communicating with a meat eater, when interacting with a meat eater, first thing you got to understand is that you have to treat them with respect. You have to treat them as you yourself would want to be treated, all right? So, rather than telling them things that you think they need to hear, ask questions that you're genuinely curious to know the answer to. So rather than saying like, hey, that animal felt pain and meat is murder and you're a murderer, blah, blah, blah. Although you may feel like wanting to say that. Instead, maybe don't do that and just ask questions like, hey, how do you think that animal was raised before it was killed for meat? Just get them to think about that. Open up their minds with some mind-opening or eye-opening questions. But don't ask the questions in a way that, it's passive-aggressive or anything like that. Like, don't ask questions like, well, how do you feel for killing an animal? Not like that. Ask questions that you're like genuinely curious to know the answer to. Another great question might be something like, how does the meat digest for you compared to mangoes or papayas or durian or fresh fruit? How does that meat actually digest for you? How does it go through your system? So that's the first thing. Ask questions instead of telling meat eaters what you think they should hear. The other thing to understand with meat eaters is that you, before interacting with them, or before telling them anything, seek first to understand rather than trying to be understood. So a lot of meat eaters, you'll mention something about how maybe people shouldn't eat meat, and then the meat eater will immediately start jumping on you and start to try to they're jumping on you to express themselves so that they can be understood first. So they're not seeking to understand your point of view, they're just jumping to be understood. And that's a moment where you need to realize, okay, I need to now take this opportunity to seek first to understand where they're coming from. That's where asking questions comes in. You can actually understand where they're coming from. How are they seeing the reality differently? Like, when I see an animal being hurt, I think that's not okay. I see an animal caged up. I see an animal going in for slaughter. I think that's not okay. They see that same animal in the same position and they think it's totally fine, it's necessary, it's meant to be that way. Or if they don't believe in factory farming, they might say, oh, backyard farming is different. We raise them in the backyard, they get to eat, blah, 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 and then we chop their neck off, and then it's okay. So still, I don't see that as okay, but they do. So I want to understand, how do they see it that way? How is it that they can feel okay with that? And so I'm learning so much I've been learning so much over the past week, asking meat eaters questions like this, and having, former vegans DMing me and emailing me and talking on the phone with them, and them expressing how they feel. And some of them, they don't have any really good answers. They're just kind of doing it because their friends are doing it, or they're doing it because everyone else is doing it. or they're doing it just out of curiosity. And other people, they legit have like these beliefs that they believe that they absolutely need to be eating fish, eggs, bison, whale blubber, whatever, because they were feeling super low and depleted before. And I don't deny that when you eat meat, you could feel better. I don't deny that possibility. In fact, there's a lot of people out there who are saying that they do feel better when they eat meat. I'm not denying that. I just don't think it's necessary to eat meat. I think you can still feel amazing. I think you can feel better still whilst eating a vegan diet, whilst eating a diet comprised of fruits and vegetables. And I believe that because that's my reality, and that's the reality of my other friends, my long-term vegan friends as well. That's the reality of all the people on Glow Health Summit. If you go to glowhealthsummit.com, you can see a list of all these vegans glowing with health who are sticking to a vegan diet despite all these other former vegans dropping off like flies for the most part and going back to eating corpses. So I believe it's entirely possible because I myself feel great and I see all these other glowing examples of vegans. So yeah, man, it's just, there's no chance I'd ever go back to eating animals. And I know this video is not about would I ever go back to eating animals, it's about how to treat a meat eater. But I'm saying I'd never go back to eating animals, and I think that's important to mention because from a lot of meat eaters' perspective, they think that's just biased. No matter what kind of no matter the conversation I have with them, I'm not going to budge. And I'm not here to budge. I'm not here to try and budge. I'm not here to say, oh, maybe I would feel better. Okay, let's say 100% fact guarantee I would feel better eating meat. I wouldn't do it because I don't need to feel better. I feel good enough right now, right? So even if I could experience a 100% increase in the way I feel whilst eating meat, I wouldn't do it because it's not necessary. My priority in life is not to feel 100 times better than I feel right now at the expense of an animal. It would be amazing to feel 100 times better, sure, but not at the expense of a life, not at the expense of 2 lives, not at the expense of hundreds of lives, not at the expense of me contributing to CO2 emissions, not at the expense of me contributing to global warming, and not to me contributing to the deforestation and the depopulation and the extinction of many thousands of animals every year. So I do want to feel better, absolutely, but I don't need to feel better than I feel right now. I feel fantastic. If I do want to feel better, there are things that I can do without hurting animals. There are things I can do without consuming animal products. And some people just don't believe that's possible for them. So it's important to understand that they truly do believe that they do need to consume animals. And so you can't come at these conversations with them with the angle like, no, you're wrong. Nobody wants to be wrong. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. So when you're having conversations with meat eaters and you want them to see your side of things, you can't be forcing their head into your head and saying like, look, think the way I think, perceive things the way I think. People are going to perceive things the way they're going to perceive things. It's important to just seek first to understand. And by seeking first to understand, by opening up and being like, look, I'm here for you, I'm listening, please keep talking, I'm like genuinely paying attention to you, I'm not just thinking of the next question while you're answering the first one, I'm like actually listening. Once they express everything to you, once they get everything out of their system and tell you everything, why they're doing what they're doing, how they feel, and blah, 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 it's going to be so much easier for them to be then receptive to what you have to say. Rather than both of you just butting heads and blah, 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 blah. You said this and I said this and I said this and you said this and I believe this and you believe that. First, find the agreements, man. At first, find the common ground between you two. So when I had my 3-hour conversation on YouTube with Drew, I was like, dude, let's start this conversation off with things we agree on, right? We all agree that eating as natural as possible is the best way to go. We all agree that having optimal digestion is the most important thing when it comes to how we feel. You know, if our digestion sucks, everything sucks. We also agree that we want to look good, we want to feel good, right? We also agree that blah, 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 blah. Go down the list of all the things we agree on. So I physically read out a list of the things we agreed on before ever hopping on that call. You got to find common ground with people and then go from there, rather than just purely looking at the differences and name calling and criticizing. That doesn't get you anywhere, man. Name calling and criticizing, like what you say about other people says more about you than it does about them. So yeah, man, just because there are people in my life, just because there are people on YouTube, just because there are heroes of mine who are now eating animal products, dead body parts of animals that wanted to live, doesn't mean I'm going to call them names, doesn't mean I'm going to criticize them, doesn't mean I'm going to openly judge them negatively. You know, of course I'm going to judge them, man. We're judging everything all the time. I'm judging the steepness of the slope right here. I'm judging the temperature of the water. I'm judging the quality of the fruit. I'm judging I'm judging everything. We're always judging everything. I'm judging that squirrel. Like, is that squirrel going to come up to me right now? Like, we're constantly judging things, but you don't need to negatively judge people all the time, ever. You know, you can just do your best to see the light in people, and like I said, just seek first to understand where they're coming from, rather than just trying to get your point across. That just doesn't help anyone, man. If you do want to preach the vegan message, preach it to the choir. Get on Instagram, get on YouTube, make videos that vegans want to hear, rally the troops, and speak your vegan message to the people who are most open to receiving it. But if you're talking to a meat eater, man, ask questions, listen up, see what they have to say, and then if they ask you for suggestions or any tips or advice, or for you to share your story, go right ahead and be that glowing example of health for them. If you want to see some glowing examples of health, head on over to glowhealthsummit.com. You can sign on up for a full month with us starting May 1st. All right, peace out, much love.